The Princess Who Hated Earth. The great halls of Xeria's sky palace were silent. Alien nobles in shining armor stood still. Their glowing eyes watched every move of the human who now stood before their princess. He looked small, weak, and very out of place. But he stood tall. His hands were raised in peace. His name was Eli. Across from him sat Princess Leora, heir to the Xerian Empire. She wore a sharp silver crown and a cold look on her face. Her violet eyes stared at the human like he was dirt on her boots. She hated humans. She always had. Humans were the reason her mother died in the Great War. Humans were greedy. Humans destroyed their own planet. Her teachers had told her stories for years. Stories of how humans poisoned their world, fought useless wars, and begged for mercy when they lost. Now Earth was under alien rule. The Xerian Empire had taken control to keep the peace, or at least that's what they said. To Princess Leora, humans were lucky to still be alive. "State your name," she said, her voice cold and sharp. "Eli," he replied. His voice was calm. Too calm. She narrowed her eyes. "You are here to represent your kind in the peace talks. Do you think one voice can fix what your species has broken?" "I don't know," Eli said honestly, "but I want to try." A soft laugh escaped her lips, but there was no kindness in it. "Try," she repeated. "You're nothing but a survivor from a failed world. Why should we listen to you?" Eli didn't move. "Because you asked for a human, and I came." Whispers filled the hall. The alien nobles looked at each other in confusion. This human, he wasn't afraid. Princess Leora stood from her silver throne. She stepped closer, her cloak floating behind her like smoke. "You stand before me with no weapon, no army, no power. You think your words matter. I think they matter to you," Eli said softly. That stopped her. She blinked. "What did you say?" "I said, you're not as cold as you pretend to be." The hall went silent again. Even the guards tensed, expecting Leora to strike him down. But she didn't move. Instead, her eyes changed. Just for a second, something passed through them. Confusion, maybe even pain. "Arrest him," she ordered, stepping back quickly. 2 guards came forward. Eli didn't resist. He simply turned to her and said one more thing. "You remind me of her." That stopped Leora in her tracks. Her voice dropped. "What did you say?" Eli didn't explain. He only looked at her with eyes full of memories. Then the guards dragged him away. Princess Leora walked back to her throne, but her heart was beating too fast. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about those words. "You remind me of her." Who was her? Why did he look at her like that? She ordered her royal system to bring her every piece of information on Eli. His history, his background, his mission. The files came quickly. Eli was a young scientist from the ruins of New Chicago. He had lost his parents during the alien bombings, but he never joined the rebel fighters. Instead, he worked in hospitals, helped alien and human victims, never once picked up a weapon. In one old file, there was a video. It showed Eli sitting with a little girl, his younger sister. She had bright eyes and talked about stars, galaxies, and dreams. Her voice was full of wonder, and she looked just like Leora had when she was young. Princess Leora leaned back in her seat. Her mind was spinning. This didn't make sense. Why did this human see his sister in her? Why did it bother her so much? She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. That's when the dream came. Fire, screams, a little girl's voice shouting, "Don't leave me." The sky was falling. The earth cracked open, and in the middle of it all, a young boy held his sister as soldiers dragged him away. Leora woke up, gasping. It wasn't her dream. It was his. But how? She stared out her window at the distant stars. Somewhere on this planet, Eli was in a cell. And somehow, their minds had touched. She told herself it was nothing, just stress, just memory. But deep inside, something had shifted. The princess who hated humans was beginning to feel something else, and it scared her more than anything. You remind me of her. Princess Leora couldn't stop thinking about the dream. It wasn't hers, she knew that. The fire, the screaming, the broken buildings, none of it belonged to her memories. But the pain, the helplessness, that felt real. She sat alone in her private chamber high above Earth's surface, watching the planet turn slowly below. Her fingers tapped against her armrest, but her mind was still locked on one name. Eli. A human. A nobody. Yet somehow he had gotten inside her head. And worse, inside her heart. Earlier that day, she had ordered the Royal Intelligence Team to dig deeper into Eli's life. His voice still echoed in her mind. You remind me of her. What did that mean? Leora didn't like not knowing. She was trained to control everything. Her empire, her feelings, her enemies. But Eli wasn't like the other humans. He didn't beg. He didn't lie. He didn't even flinch when she insulted him. Instead, he looked at her with eyes that were not angry, but full of old sadness, like he had already lost too much to waste energy on hate. The reports arrived quickly. Leora dismissed her guards and read in silence. Eli was a war orphan. His parents were doctors. They refused to leave during the Xerian attacks on Earth. They died trying to save both humans and aliens. His sister, her name was Maya, was only 8 when she died in a rebel bombing. She was curious, smart, and dreamed of being an astronaut. Her last recorded video log was attached. Leora pressed play. The screen lit up with the soft voice of a child. Hi, Eli. If you're watching this, I'm probably in trouble again for sneaking into your lab. She giggled. But I just wanted to tell you, the stars are so pretty tonight. I hope one day I can go up there and maybe see a real alien. I think they're not all bad. Some might even be kind. The girl smiled brightly, her big eyes full of dreams. I love you, big brother. Don't ever stop looking up. The video ended. Leora sat in silence. She didn't realize her hand was shaking. The girl's voice, her eyes, the way she talked about stars. It reminded her of herself. Back when she used to believe peace was possible. Back when she thought ruling meant protecting, not punishing. Before the war changed her. Before her mother died. For the first time in years, Princess Leora didn't feel like a leader. She felt like a person. Down in the sky prison cell, Eli sat quietly on the cold bench. His wrists were bruised from the metal cuffs, but he didn't complain. The guards had stopped mocking him. Something about him made them uneasy, like he was more than he appeared to be. He looked up as the door hissed open. Leora entered the room without guards. The silence was thick. He stood slowly. Princess. She didn't speak at first, just stared at him, her face unreadable. Finally, she said, "You shouldn't speak to me that way in front of my court." Eli nodded. "I know." "Then why did you say it?" He met her eyes. "Because it was true." Leora took a step closer. "You said I remind you of her, of your sister." "Yes." "Why?" Eli smiled softly. "She used to talk about stars, just like you. She believed even enemies could be friends one day, even when everyone called her foolish." Leora looked away. Something heavy stirred in her chest. "I watched her die," Eli said, his voice low. "I couldn't protect her, and I hated aliens for a long time." She looked back at him. "Do you still?" He shook his head. "Not all of you. Some might even be kind." The same words Maya had said in the video. Leora's breath caught. He had no idea she'd seen the recording. He was just speaking truth. There was a long pause between them. Then she asked, "Do you hate me?" Eli thought for a moment. "No, I pity you." That surprised her. He continued, "You carry more chains than I do. I see it in your eyes." Leora's hand twitched. For a second, She wanted to strike him. But instead, she turned and left the cell. Back in her room, she stood at the mirror. She looked at her reflection, not the royal armor, not the perfect braid, not the crown. She looked at her eyes. Were they really that heavy? Did she look like someone who had lost her way? That night, she dreamed again. This time, it was not fire. It was stars. She saw Maya's face, saw herself as a child, reaching for light. And in the distance, a voice whispered, "You are not your pain." She woke up with tears in her eyes. No one had ever made her feel this way before. Not a commander. Not an emperor. Not even her own people. Just a human. One who saw her escape from the sky prison. The sky prison hovered like a silent monster over Earth, hidden in the clouds, invisible to the human eye. It was made of dark alloy and powered by Xerian energy, a place where the Empire kept its most dangerous criminals and its quietest secrets. Eli sat alone in cell 7. No windows, no light except for the pale blue glow on the ceiling. Time moved strangely in this place. He didn't know if it had been hours or days since Leora had visited him, but her eyes had stayed with him. There had been something in them: confusion, pain, maybe even guilt. For the first time, Eli had seen more than a cold alien princess. He had seen someone haunted by the past, just like him. He didn't know what that meant yet, but he felt it meant something. Meanwhile, in the high command room of the Xerian Sky Fleet, red lights began to flash. A voice called out, "Incoming ships detected. Code Black." Repeat, "Code Black." The officer in charge looked stunned. Who dares attack a Xerian prison? The answer came seconds later. 4 ships, cloaked in shadow, blasted through the defense grid. They moved fast, with old rebel markings on their wings. Inside one of the ships, Commander Kale sat at the controls. His face was scared, and his eyes burned with hate. "Target locked," he said. "We get the human and silence him. The princess will understand, once it's done." Back in her royal quarters on the floating palace, Princess Leora watched the newsfeed with a clenched jaw. She recognized the rebel ships instantly, Xerians who opposed peace with Earth. They wanted war again. They believed humans should be erased, not forgiven. And they were attacking her prison. They were coming for Eli. She knew it without question. Because he had spoken truth. Because he had made her feel. And that made him dangerous. To the rebels. To the Empire. To her. Leora stood quickly. Her guards tried to stop her. "Princess, the council has ordered you to remain." "I'm going to the prison." "Alone." "Alone?" "Yes," she said. "And if you try to stop me, I'll remove your ranks myself." No one followed her after that. Inside the prison, alarms howled. Eli heard explosions in the distance. The walls shook. Red lights pulsed like a heartbeat. The door to his cell suddenly opened, but no one stood there. Just silence. He waited. Was this a trap? Then a figure appeared, dark cloak, long boots, and eyes that glowed like amethyst. "Princess," he asked. She didn't answer. She only walked in, pulled a laser knife from her belt, and sliced the chains off his wrists. "We have to move. Now." Eli looked confused. "You came here. Yourself. You're worth more trouble than I expected," she muttered. They ran through the hallways. Sparks flew from the ceiling. Smoke choked the air. As they reached the escape pod bay, a wall exploded behind them. Commander Kale stepped through the dust. His armor gleamed. His gun pointed straight at Eli. "So it's true," Kale sneered. "You protect the human." Leora stepped in front of Eli. "He is under royal protection." Kale laughed. "You sound just like your mother before she died. Soft." Leora's jaw clenched. She was stronger than you'll ever be. Kale fired. Leora's shield flared as the shot hit her. She staggered, but stayed standing. Eli grabbed a loose panel and slammed it into Kale's side. Kale growled and turned toward him, "Run," Leora shouted. "But go." Together, they jumped into the nearest pod. Leora slammed the launch button. The pod blasted out of the prison, fire chasing behind. As the stars rushed past the window, neither of them spoke. Their breathing was heavy. Their hands were scraped, but they were alive. And alone. Far from the Empire. Far from Earth. Just the two of them, floating in the dark. Eli looked over. "Why did you come for me?" Leora looked back at him. For a moment, her voice was quiet. "I don't know." "That's not true," he said. She closed her eyes. "Because I saw my own lies, in your truth, and I couldn't live with them anymore." The pod beeped. The navigation was damaged. They were drifting toward an uncharted system. No communication. No weapons. No plan. They would crash in minutes. But neither of them panicked. They just sat there, side by side, both aware of something new growing between them. Not trust yet. Not friendship. But something. Fragile. Real. The forbidden planet. The escape pod spun through the blackness of space, sparks trailing behind like the tail of a dying comet. Inside, Princess Leora gripped the edge of her seat, her knuckles white. Beside her, Eli worked quickly on the pod's failing control panel. Sweat dripped down his face, but his hands moved with calm focus. "Where are we headed?" she asked, her voice tight. "I don't know," Eli said. "The pod's navigation was damaged in the blast. It's taking us to the nearest planet with breathable air." "Is it Zerian territory?" Eli glanced at her. "You're the princess. You tell me." Leora stared out the small window. The dark green planet filled the screen, half covered in swirling storms, half hidden by thick forests. She narrowed her eyes. "That world is unmarked on our charts. A ghost system. Forbidden." "Sounds like the perfect place to crash," Eli muttered. They landed hard. The pod skidded through dense trees, broke through vines, and came to a sudden stop with a loud crack as the front thrusters burst into flame. Lyra coughed as the smoke filled the cabin. "Out. Now." They kicked open the pod hatch and fell onto soft earth. Eli looked around, blinking through the thick air. "Where are we?" The forest stretched high above them, trees glowing with soft green light. Strange birds flew overhead, wings humming like instruments. The sky was a deep purple, filled with two suns. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Lyra looked uneasy. "It's wrong. This place shouldn't exist." They spent the next hours searching the area. No signs of life. No machines. No cities. Just nature. Wild, untouched, alive. Lyra's suit began blinking red. She frowned. "Radiation." Eli checked his scanner. "No. It's something else. The planet is full of energy, but not dangerous." "Then why was it hidden?" Eli looked at her. Maybe someone didn't want it to be found. By nightfall, they had set up a small shelter from broken pod pieces. Eli started a fire with tech scraps. Lyra sat nearby, arms crossed, silent. He handed her a heated ration pack. "You should eat." She took it without speaking. After a long pause, she said, "I shouldn't be here." "You saved my life," Eli said. "Twice. I also arrested you." Eli gave a small smile. "Balance, I guess." Leora looked at the fire. "This planet, it's stirring something in me, like a memory I don't remember." Eli nodded. "Same. It feels familiar, but impossible." Suddenly, they heard a sound. A soft cry. Not an animal. Not a bird. A child. They froze. Lyora stood quickly, her hand on her sidearm. "That's impossible. No one lives here." But the cry came again. Weak, scared, human. They followed the sound into the forest, pushing through vines and glowing plants. There, under the roots of a giant tree, sat a small child. Curled up, eyes wide with fear, skin pale, but not entirely human, not entirely alien either. Lyra knelt beside her. It's a hybrid. Eli's heart pounded, half human, half Syrian. The child looked at them, eyes glowing faintly like Lyra's. She reached out and touched Lyra's hand. A rush of images flashed in Lyra's mind. A human man. A Syrian woman. Both in love. Both hiding. Then, death, fire, fear, the child left behind. Lyra gasped and pulled back. She showed me everything, just like in my dreams. Eli stared at the child. She's connected to both of us. Lyra nodded slowly. And she's why this planet is forbidden. She's living proof. Proof of what? That humans and Syrians were never meant to be enemies. They carried the child back to camp. She didn't speak, but she clung tightly to Lyra's cloak. Eli smiled softly. She trusts you. Lyra looked at him. Why me? Because deep down, you don't hate us anymore. Lyra didn't answer. But in her heart, something had changed forever. That night, as they sat by the fire, Lyra spoke. My mother died in the human war. She was trying to protect a peace mission. Humans destroyed the ship. I lost my parents the same way, Eli said, trying to save aliens. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Lyra whispered, what if? We've both been wrong. Eli looked at the child sleeping between them. Then maybe it's time to be right. The next morning, they explored the deeper part of the forest. They found ruins, an old research base, half buried. Inside were logs, recordings, notes. It told the story of two scientists, one human, one Syrian, who ran from war, loved each other, and hid their child here, fearing both sides would hunt her down. They died protecting her secret. Lyra stood over the final log. It read, if anyone finds her, don't let her be a symbol of shame. Let her be the future. Eli said softly, we have to take her back. Let the world know. Lyra's eyes burned with fire. Yes, but they'll try to stop us. Then we don't let them. The sky darkened again. Their peaceful moment was over. But something greater had begun. A mission, a cause, and a reason to fight together. The child of war. The child slept soundly between them, her tiny fingers curled into Lyra's cloak. Her name, they had learned from the old logs, was Aleri, half human, half Syrian. A child born of love, a child born of war. She was never supposed to exist. Lyra sat by the fire, her thoughts turning like storms. Her gaze was fixed on the stars overhead, but her mind was far away, in council rooms, battlefields, and the burning memory of her mother's funeral. Everything she had believed was now cracking apart. Syrians had always taught that mixing with humans was unnatural, against the sacred laws, an insult to their ancient bloodline. But Aleri wasn't an insult. She was hope. I don't know if I can protect her, Lyra whispered. Eli looked up from where he was reinforcing the shelter. You already are. She's not just a child, Eli. She's a living truth, and the Empire doesn't want truth. Neither do the rebels. Eli sat beside her. That's why we have to fight for her, because no one else will. Lyra looked at him, her eyes softer than ever. You believe in things too easily, and you stopped believing too soon. There was silence. Then Aleri stirred, eyes half open, and reached for both of them in her sleep. That simple moment, the three of them, together, felt like something sacred. But peace never lasted long. Early the next morning, the sky changed. A rumble, a flicker. Then a red flash burned across the horizon. Lyra stood, alert. They found us. A rebel scout ship descended through the clouds, its engines roaring. Within seconds, two dark figures in armor stepped onto the forest floor, scanning with thermal sensors. Eli pulled Aleri behind him. We need to hide. No, Lyra said, stepping forward. I'll handle them." Eli grabbed her arm. "Leora, they'll shoot you." She pulled away. "Let them try." Leora stepped out into the open, her royal armor dusty but still shining in the morning light. The rebels froze, then lowered their weapons slightly. "Princess," one said, "you're alive." "Lower your guns," she commanded. "Where is the human?" The second asked, eyes scanning. "And the creature?" Leora's voice turned ice cold. "You're not here under Empire orders. You're rogue. You're hunting a child." "She's a threat," the rebel replied. "She's proof of weakness. If the humans use her, they can turn the galaxy against us." "No," Leora said. "If we kill her, we prove we're no better than the worst of them." The rebels hesitated, then raised their weapons again. "Step aside." Suddenly, a blast echoed from the trees. One rebel screamed as Eli struck from behind with a salvaged stun rod. The second turned, but Leora was faster. In one move, she disarmed him and sent him crashing into the dirt. They tied the two up and dragged them behind the trees. Eli looked shaken but alive. "I told you we needed to hide." Leora didn't smile. "We need to leave. More will come." They packed quickly, wrapping Alari in soft cloth and salvaging what little they could from the shelter. "We can't run forever," Eli said. "We won't," Leora replied. "We're going home." "Home?" He blinked. "You mean Earth?" "No, Ziria." Eli froze. "Are you serious?" "She must be seen," Leora said. "By the Council, by my father, by the galaxy. They need to see what they're afraid of, and why they're wrong." Eli exhaled. "They'll try to silence us. Then we'll speak louder." They made their way to the old research base. In one of the underground hangars, they discovered a small transport ship. Rusted, low on power, but still functional. Leora powered it up. The system blinked with a name. "Starborn One." Eli smiled. "Fitting." Before liftoff, he turned to her. "You know, this makes you a traitor." Leora didn't blink. "Then so be it." As they launched into the sky, the planet beneath them faded into the mist. Alari sat between them, quiet but watching everything. Her eyes held no fear, only light. 3 days passed as they crossed the stars. Leora sent coded messages to trusted friends, those who believed in peace but feared speaking out. One replied. A location was set, a hidden system, a neutral moon where news spread faster than ships. There, they would gather the media, the outcasts, and even royal defectors. There, they would show the child to the world. But danger followed. Back on Ziria, the rebel council had learned of the child. Commander Kale stood before the Emperor himself. "She must be eliminated before the people see her," Kale growled. "The princess has betrayed us. Her blood is tainted now." The Emperor looked into the stars and gave the order. On board Starborn One, Leora looked at Alari. "She doesn't understand what she is," she said. "She doesn't have to," Eli replied. "She just needs someone to stand for her." Leora nodded. "For so long, I thought strength came from fear, power, control. And now?" Eli asked. "Now I think strength comes from truth, and the courage to carry it." The ship entered the neutral zone. Thousands had gathered. Activists, humans, Zirians, and cameras from across the stars. They were waiting for proof, waiting for something real. As Leora stepped out with Alari in her arms, the crowd gasped. The light from the suns hit them, and for the first time, the galaxy saw a child of two worlds. Not a weapon, not a threat, but a symbol of something new. Eli stood beside them, and Leora spoke. The trial of truth. The courtroom was unlike any other in the galaxy. Built into the heart of Ziria's capital spire, the Grand Council chamber was carved from black crystal, its walls etched with the names of every emperor who had ruled before. Above the throne hung the symbol of the empire, two wings wrapped around a sword of justice. The people believed this was where truth lived. But today, it felt like a place where truth came to die. Princess Leora stood in the center of the chamber, no longer in royal armor. She wore plain robes, gray, unmarked, humble. Beside her stood Eli, dressed in Xerian courtwear, his posture steady but calm. He had never imagined he would stand in the same room as the Xerian High Council, and definitely not on trial. But this was no normal trial. This was a war of belief, and the whole galaxy was watching. Behind them, seated quietly, was Alari. The hybrid child wore a soft robe and clutched a stone in her hand, a keepsake from the forest planet. She didn't speak, but her wide eyes followed everything. Across the chamber sat the Emperor, Leora's father. His face was unreadable, eyes cold, shoulders heavy with the weight of power. He stared at his daughter not with love, but with quiet disappointment. The first voice came from the right side of the council. A Xerian elder stood, his cloak rich with rank. "Princess Leora," he said slowly, "you stand accused of high treason, aiding a human fugitive, fleeing imperial authority, and bringing forth a forbidden hybrid child against the sacred law." Murmurs filled the room. The elder raised his hand. "Do you deny these charges?" "I do not," Leora said, clear and loud. Gasps. Eli turned toward her, but her face was calm. "I do not deny saving him," she continued, "or bringing Alari here, because the truth should never be illegal." Another elder growled. "She is a violation of our bloodline, a threat to the future." "No," Leora replied. "She is the future." One by one, the council members rose. Some shouted. Others shook their heads. One even wept. The crowd beyond the chamber, thousands watching via transmission across the stars, remained silent, waiting. Eli stepped forward. "I am human. I lost everything to this war. My parents, my sister. I hated aliens once. But this child, and this woman, showed me something I never thought possible." He looked directly at the Emperor. "You see her as a threat, but I see her as proof that we're not as different as we think." The Emperor stood slowly. He walked toward them, the weight of centuries in his steps. He stopped before Alari. She looked up at him. No fear, no shame, just quiet curiosity. He reached out and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. The crowd held its breath. Then he turned to the council. "Many years ago, I told myself peace was weakness," he said softly. "That my wife died because we trusted humans. I built my rule on that belief." He looked back at Leora. "But today, my daughter has shown me something stronger than fear. She has shown me courage." He turned to the room. "I do not revoke her title." Shock. "I do not punish this child." Roars from both sides. The Emperor raised his voice. "Instead, I call for a vote. A new law. One that erases the old hatred. One that begins a path to unity." Outside, crowds across Syria watched the moment in disbelief. Some wept. Some cheered. Others shouted with rage. But the winds of change had begun to stir. Later that night, in the quiet garden of the palace, Leora sat with Alari on a stone bench. The child played with the flowers, laughing softly. Eli walked up beside her. "You did it." "We did it," Leora said. He smiled. "What now?" She looked at the stars. "Now we teach her to fly." Across the galaxy, debates rage. New leaders rose. Old statues fell. Some rebel groups swore vengeance, but many laid down their weapons. The child they tried to hide had become a symbol, a light in the dark. And in the middle of it all, Leora and Eli stood quietly. No longer enemies, no longer strangers, but protectors of something greater than both their worlds. Truth, hope, and the beginning of a new future. The princess and the human. The galaxy had changed, not with explosions, not with armies, but with a child's quiet smile, and the courage of two souls, one human, one Xerian, who dared to stand together in a world built on fear. Alari's story spread like a wildfire through the stars. Her image, half Xerian, half human, appeared on screens, books, murals. Some called her the Bridge. Others called her the Living Peace. But to Leora and Eli, she was just Alari, a child who loved flowers, asked too many questions, and liked to hold both their hands at the same time. 6 months after the trial, a historic ceremony was held in the newly declared neutral city of Unity, floating between Earth and Xeria in low orbit. It was the first time both species had shared leadership. Leora stood on a high platform overlooking thousands. She no longer wore a crown. She had given it up willingly, choosing instead to lead as a citizen, not a ruler. Beside her stood Eli, wearing a dark cloak stitched with both Earth and Xerian symbols. Alari stood between them, holding their hands as always. This moment wasn't just history, it was healing. When Leora stepped forward to speak, the entire city went silent. She took a deep breath. "I was taught to fear humans," she said. "I was taught that pain should be answered with power. That war was the only language we shared." She looked at Eli. "I believed those lies until one human stood before me. Not with weapons, not with anger, but with truth." She turned back to the crowd. "And in that truth, I found freedom." Applause rang out across the floating city. Leora raised her hand. "The galaxy does not need more heroes. It needs more listeners, more people brave enough to feel, even when it hurts." She looked down at Alari, smiling. "And sometimes it needs children to show us what love really looks like." Later, as the city lights danced and celebrations continued, Eli and Leora walked along the sky bridge overlooking Earth. Below them, glowing ships moved gently through the clouds. Both human and Xerian designs now flew side by side. "You gave up your title," Eli said quietly. "I gave up a prison," Leora replied. "Now I can build something new." Eli looked at her. "You're not afraid anymore." "I'm still afraid," she admitted. "But now I know fear can't lead." They stopped at the railing. Leora looked at the stars. "I used to think the galaxy was full of enemies." "And now?" Eli asked. "Now I think maybe it's full of strangers waiting to become friends." Eli smiled. "That sounds like something Maya would have said." Leora smiled back. "Then maybe I would have liked her." That night, in their new home in Unity City, Leora tucked Alari into bed. The child yawned. "Tell me a story." Leora sat beside her. "Which one?" "The one about the fire and the forest. The one where everything was broken. But then it wasn't." Leora brushed a lock of hair from her forehead. "That's not a story, Alari. That's what happened." "But it sounds like a story," the girl whispered, her eyes growing heavy. "A story where love wins." Leora kissed her forehead gently. "Maybe that's what makes it a good one." Eli stood in the doorway, watching quietly. Leora joined him. "She's happy," he said. "She's free," Leora added. They walked together into the living room, the sound of stars humming softly through the city windows. Time passed. Not all wounds healed. Some rebels still fought against Unity. Some humans still feared the Empire. Some Xerians still clung to old laws. But change, once impossible, had begun. Thanks to one human, one princess, and one small child who should never have existed, but did. Years later, Alari would stand where her parents once stood. Older, wiser, stronger. She would speak to a new generation, not as a mistake, but as a miracle. And she would begin her story with these words. "There was once a princess who hated humans, until one changed everything."